Let's make this interactive. Any questions, please feel free to interrupt. We have 45 minutes. I doubt we're going to use it unless you have a lot of questions, all right? So to get started, when we look at the landscape and what's driving the interest in the product, it really is about companies that are looking to transform, right? Transform their business. And as you've seen, right, there's a lot of money being spent on this, sometimes successfully, sometimes unsuccessfully. And we have a point of view on this that the failures are occurring and successes are occurring based on the knowledge of your current business processes, meaning how your business is running today, right? And without that, you can go blindly into making changes, whether it's process improvements, it's automation or whatnot, without having proper data. And so what we've seen, right, is a lot of money invested, a lot of money wasted, right? One thing that's interesting is that in one of the Gartner studies I've read, there's about 1% of these transformation efforts that have been successful, according to Gartner. What we're looking at right now is to give people an understanding, right, of what is happening in their current estate. And so what we do in order to solve that problem, right, when we talked about having a lack of understanding of your current state business process, is we're trying to provide that insight and understanding of what's going on. And through that, we have our process discovery product, which you heard Mihir talk about in the keynote earlier today, right? And it's not just about automation. It's about understanding, again, how your business is running and making a data-driven decision, right, on whether you should automate something first. Perhaps you could improve that process first. But without having that detailed data, right, of how workers are working, meaning how they're going about their daily tasks, you sometimes will make decisions, especially automation decisions, that lead to rework or broken automations, right? And it's not just about automations, right? Well, as I said earlier, what we're trying to make sure you do is you have that understanding so that you make that a data-based decision. And with us, what we're doing, right, some differentiators with process discovery is we take advantage of the cloud, right? If you look at how we do this, and Charlie will walk through this in the demo, it's a visual-based approach. So rather than rely on logs and integrations, we'll have a visual-based approach, meaning we look at what's on your screen, right, just as your eyes would, and then we process that data, right, through our system, which we'll get into, and how that works. And then the output is a set of insights that allow you to make an informed decision on what you could be doing. Not necessarily what you should be doing, but what you could be doing to improve your business. And the key differentiator is the cloud. If you look at, again, if you're using visual to drive our models, you need to have the compute power. So when we look at other products on the market, what we see is they tend to not be able to handle the amount of data that comes through from the visual images. And so the reason we run in the cloud is that gives us the capability and the compute power to process those images, right, at scale and at volume. And the more data we have, the more accurate our models are. And when I talk about models, we have our computer vision models, which breaks the data down into a structured data set. And then we run this through our, what we call our machine learning models, so to speak. And that allows them the models to find frequency, patterns, duration in the product. And then what we try to do is we try to stitch that back together and provide a best representation of the process flows, right? And all its variations. The key takeaway from here, though, is that we tend not to focus on just one or two SMEs. When I talk about scale, it's not just scale from a compute perspective or data, it's also the people perspective. We will deploy our agents onto users' desktops, and we are looking for a broad subset of users in order to provide us the best representation of how people are working. So if you interview a SME, you'll get what that SME is doing, not necessarily what people down in the other room are doing or across the country. So we try to have capture a representative subset of workers so that we can understand those inherent variations that occur on a day-to-day basis, okay? And having that understanding what happens is you may find out that your SOP may not be the best representation or the best path because your employees have found a better way or more productive way to do their work. And when you just interview a SME or two, you miss out on those opportunities, right? So we're going to walk through how this works just quickly. So we'll deploy a set of, we call them sensors or agents, think of them onto a user's desktop. Today it's Windows only, okay? And the deployment it takes about a minute. It can either be self-installed or it can be centrally deployed through your IT department, okay? And again, all of this has gone through, before we go through this, we go through security reviews and whatnot to ensure that what we're doing is not going to bring any harm or to the network or impact the employees' desktops. So we'll put them onto the desktop and then we'll record for generally about a couple weeks. And we found that period of time to provide enough data, but also to in case people work differently, maybe they interact with different applications on certain days, then it allows us to capture all that interaction across that period of time, okay? And then once it's captured, and again, the key thing here is we're not talking about only applications that have log files, right? Again, we're visual based, so we don't require any integrations or any APIs. And so this allows us to capture data from enterprise applications, think Oracle, SAP, that are on-prem, cloud-based applications, Workday, Salesforce, et cetera. Any bespoke application, even if that's is web-based, right? As well as productivity apps. So think Excel, Word, Outlook, et cetera, right? So that visual-based approach allows us to capture that. And then what we'll do is we run it up into our cloud where all the models sit, right? So the computer vision models break that down into a structured data set, and then all of our algorithms behind the ML mine that, looking for frequency, duration, patterns, et cetera. And then we try to reconstruct that, as I mentioned earlier, into the best representation, along with all the variations of the past that the people that were observed take, okay? And then we'll provide you data, and Charlie will show you this, hopefully, through various dashboards where you'll be able to see insights. Now, what I'd like to point out, what we don't have is the business context. So think about that. We don't know your SAP quote to cash or whatnot process. We just know what the data is. So the people that interact with us could be the SMEs, it could be a business analyst, someone that has that context. And so they take that data and add that context, right? And then together with that, they make a decision on, along with our product, which is making recommendations, what you could do to improve. And improve, as I said earlier, could be automation. It could be leaning out a process and then automating it, right? In one case, we had a customer during the height of COVID that we saw a group of people where they were outliers. There's about 6, 7 people were outliers from everybody else. And they were taking these a completely random path off from the main cohort of users. And as it turns out, when our customer looked at it, it was this group of new employees that weren't onboarded. So they were figuring out how to execute the process on their own without following the SOP because no one actually showed them what the SOP was. So in that example, the business gain was actually just through properly training. So again, it's having the right information in order to make the best decision for your business. This is one of our customers in the healthcare, although it says business consulting. Lumevity is a subsidiary of Highmark Health in Pittsburgh, which is one of the blues. They're also a provider and insurer and whatnot. And Lumevity is their service arm, so they're taking their lessons learned from Highmark as they went through their transformation, right? And they're trying to market those services out to other blues and other companies in the greater Pittsburgh area, right? And so they were doing their discovery manually, right? Both within Highmark, but also for some of their clients. And so what they're doing today is taking advantage of our product, the process discovery product, right? And so some of the benefits are, a reduction in the amount of time that it's taking to execute on that. And then they've been able, as they acquire new clients, they've streamlined their onboarding process from what it was, and so they've been able to increase that throughput. And then lastly, just purely from an automation perspective, have uncovered dozens of new automation opportunities, both within Highmark, but also external with their customers. What I'm going to do, Charlie, fingers crossed, is since the picture's worth 1,000 words, we're going to have Charlie walk through a demo to kind of give you some hands-on experience. We have a use case that he's going to walk you through, and then we'll come back and close out, wrap up with a few slides and Q&A. Okay?
Cool. So I actually need the clicker. I'll explain in a second.
Uh-oh.
So so we had, unfortunately, it's not internet problems. We had problems with the HDMI port. So this is my backup slides, but if you want to see the live demo, both the demo booth outside, so if you want to see after I do this, you want to see it live, the demo booth outside, or just come to me afterwards and I can show you on my laptop. It's just not, the HDMI is not going through the display. So we're going to use the backup slides, but this is actually available, real time, live, same one. So I apologize for that. One thing I want to start with is, how many of you have done automation? Friendly crowd, there we go. So how many of you actually have done discovery, like manual discovery, let's say? Start with that. How many of you have automated some of your discovery? Either way, how many of you have had, let's say, issues with gaps or not getting the full and complete information, that kind of thing with your discovery?
With broken automations, rework,
right,
cetera,
whatever it may
right?
be. And
yeah.
So that's sort of the case I'm going to set up. The other thing I've heard from customers, and you guys tell me, but is there's two sort of distinct kinds of sort of KPIs that might come out that you have to meet. Right? One of them is a business might say, as a business, as a whole company, we have to reduce costs by, let's say, 10%. Right? And every business then has their portion of that they have to meet. And is that something that you guys have all sort of dealt with in the realm of automation? Right? The other thing is obviously, right, or we need to grow, but we can't hire anyone. Right? We can't do that. So those are the two sort of main cases. I'm going to talk through just an example of someone says we need to reduce our cost by 10%. It doesn't matter either way. It doesn't matter as long as your goal is something around sort of finding ways to be more efficient. Right? So first thing I want to note is the way that we work, right? Some of you may be familiar, for example, with task mining, right? And the way that we work is a bit different, right? The idea of the general task mining is you have an employee click start when they start a process. They click stop when they stop a process. They're still only showing you what they think you want to see. They're not trying to be malicious about it, right? They're just trying to do the right thing, but they're going to miss stuff. And I'm guessing most of you have gone through that, whether it's a manual discovery or recording or whatever. And that's how most task mining solutions work. Whereas ours is, all right, look, throw this on the desktop of, let's say, 20% of your team, record the data for 2 weeks. All it's doing in the background is sending the information that's needed, including screenshots, to the cloud. Right? And then all the heavy work is done at the cloud level. So the employee doesn't interact with anything. It's just running in the background. They do their normal job. They don't have to tell it when it's starting. They don't have to tell them when they're stopping. All the heavy lifting is done after the fact. So now you're recording, right, at scale. Right? And so that solves that problem of the manual discovery where you only get a few people, or task mining traditionally where you get a few people, and you end up missing information. You have gaps. Like Steve referred, if you do automation, you end up doing rework. So far, everyone following me? Hopefully? No? All right. Good. So now let's talk about what happens when the data gets to our platform. I know a lot of you are going to have questions around how do you make sure it's private, sensitive, whatever data. We can talk about that afterwards. There's plenty of solutions for that, but that could be another 20 minutes. So let's say the data gets to our platform. Let's start with a process where, again, the business has had a KPI of reducing cost by 10%. Now, you have an SAP process. Let's say this is part of your procure-to-pay process. It's called invoice entry. Right? Now, you look at this and you realize, well, SAP is that orange one. I don't know if you can see it in the back. And you're like, well, we thought it was going to be like 80, 90% SAP. What's going on here? We've got like 15% of the time spent in Excel. We've got a lot of time spent in this other Fin app. Like, clearly, what we had in mind, what was really happening, right, isn't really happening. This is just setting the stage. We haven't done any process discovery yet, but now you get a quick sense of like, hey, was your hypothesis right or more likely wrong, frankly? And I think some of you who've done discovery who've seen under the covers, probably, I think most of the world runs on Excel. So is there anyone here who can guarantee me they don't have a process that has Excel? How about anyone guarantee me that they don't have a process that's probably 25% Excel? I think 15% is probably low. Right? So I didn't know this until I started working, right? Until I started working in this space.
I think what we see a lot of times is that a lot of our customers think that the core application encapsulates the process. And when they don't consider how much of the process occurs outside of that core application, right? And so what we're trying to do, as Charlie's going to talk about, is provide you the data that shows, in this case, the vast majority of the process occurs outside the core application.
All right. So now, go here. I just want to show you a quick example of what happens on our platform side. So this is, by the way, everything I'm showing you is everything that would be available today if you have this product. Right? There's nothing sort of hidden here. I want to point out one thing that we do that's different is we leverage computer vision on our platform to really identify what's happening. Just to give you an example, as a human, I look at this, and I don't know if you can see it in the back, but I know they clicked on the log on button. Right? As a human, I know that. Well, our platform looks at this. It actually identifies, just like a human does, that it's a button. And in fact, if you can see the field name up there, which you probably can't if you're in the back, but it does say log on. So the platform identified that what they clicked on was a button. It identified the name of it was log on, and it's able to pull that information out, which becomes really useful later when I show you what a PDD looks like, right? Process definition document. And the main point here is that if you can see it on your desktop, specifically Windows right now, but if you can see it on your desktop, it works with our platform. I don't care if it's Citrix. I don't care if you have a mainframe terminal on your Windows. If you see it, it'll work with our platform.
And those last two are differentiators with other products on the market, right? We have a lot of our customers that are running Citrix or other VDI environments. And then we have some financial services in healthcare that are running mainframes still, right? Which surprised me, but it's out there. And so having that ability to still capture that data from those systems is key these days.
Yeah. All right, so now you're trying, again, we're back to solving this problem of 10% cost reduction. So you've leveraged the platform to find the processes within that data. And this is an example of the kind of thing that you might see when you look for a process. So this is a result that the platform creates from the process discovery. You can see on the left side, that is the start. Sort of you follow the different paths as they split out. Right? The cool thing is, though, you didn't have to create this. The platform found this for you. It's identifying each step. And in fact, right away, you have cues as to where you might want to focus. If I look at the lines, right, for the paths, the top line there is thicker than the bottom line. Right? Even right away, if I want to try to figure out, look at an area for optimization where there's a lot of activity, I know if I start that top path, that's the thing that happens most. If I want to dive deeper, though, over here, we'll even give you the timing for every single path. And again, exactly how many times it happens. The whole goal here is to give you the data that you didn't have before to make intelligent decisions about where you're going to focus.
So Charlie, what do those other paths represent?
So you mean like these lower paths?
Two.
So
yeah.
These are just different variations of the same process.
That other workers are
that other people have done, right?
Okay.
And this is across a team. This is not just one person or two people. This is across the team. It's finding the commonalities for you and showing them to you in this process.
And these boxes represent what?
So the boxes are the part that Steve mentioned earlier. Hey, we don't have the context, right? Platform will find what's happening. It'll tell you each screen. You can be able to click through it. It doesn't know the context, and you can't see it again back there, and I can't even read it from here because of the display. But each one of these colored boxes actually has a contextual label that your business analyst, for example, would have added to add some context to the process. Right? In other words, this, for example, is, and I know this one, but this happens to be the SAP logon. This is entering the invoice data into SAP, and so on. And there is text there if you could see it on a better screen.
And so, but the models learn over time. So if you think about it, when you see something for the first time and then you see it subsequently, you start recognizing the patterns, right? And our models are the same way, right? So they learn over time. So the next time it sees the same application, maybe with a different customer, it will have that understanding of what's happening. Okay, it'll recognize those paths and those labels.
We'll move on to, so now we've discovered the process. And let's say as a BA, I've looked at this and I said, hey, I want to look into this one up here. It happens a lot. It takes a lot of time from the team. Let's dive in. So now I've essentially clicked on that path. I've sort of clicked through, and I can look at any instance of that path. So there might have been multiple people that did that part of the process, right? And I can click through and see exactly what they did. Unfortunately, I can't actually click through on this slide. But for example, you can see right here, where are we? They start with opening the invoice, but then they're doing a bunch of stuff in Excel. Well, why are they using Excel? We thought they were going to enter everything in SAP. And so now you might go back and realize, that Excel part was the process we had, 6 months ago. People were supposed to stop entering data in that Excel sheet. It's not needed anymore. So the solution might not be automation. It might just be training. Anyone? Other automation folks may not like when I say that. But it might just be training. Yeah, go. Did you have a question?
Is that an animation or is that an image?
What, this? Which part? This thing here?
Yeah. Recording of a movie?
No, so you can think of it as a movie. Each step is a different screenshot. So I could actually, again, you can come afterwards and I'll show you. I can click through these, and I can even play it back as if it's a movie, and it'll automatically show me step by step.
Yeah, so every time there's an action, it'll take a screenshot. Right. And so if you hit playback, then it will animate that, and you can see how the sequencing works.
And you're filtering out personal stuff?
Yeah, we're going to save that, which I know is on everyone's mind, towards the end.
Right.
And we'll address
and if
that.
we don't have time, everyone,
we'll
you can come
time.
up to me.
We have plenty of time.
Anyway, you can always come up to me too. I'm happy.
Was there a question in the back? Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I have a .NET internal app. Most of our users use
Yeah.
that as part of their day-to-day.
Yeah.
One of the functions is like a notes portion.
Yep.
Going in for a ticket.
Yeah.
So, that free form notes section, is that something that would get captured, that particular portion of the app versus other areas? You're spending lots of time on?
Yeah. So as a human, when you look at that app and they're in the notes portion, does it look like it's a different screen to you as a human? Does it?
Sort of. You got to click a button, make it open.
Okay, but it has some sort of, either it says notes or it says something on there that you looked at it, you would know, right? So if you as a human would identify it as a different screen, then yes, we can identify it as a different screen, right? Again, there's multiple signals, but the coolest thing is even if they all fail, we have computer vision and can look at it like a human.
Yeah, and
right?
then I can have my VA classify.
Right, you can, yeah,
Yes.
well, yeah, and they just be,
Yes.
so now it's notes, and you can figure out how often they do notes. By the way, if you decide you don't care about the notes part, you can even have it look for the process and tell it to ignore the notes part. And it won't show up here. So you have options like that to filter. All right, so you've gone through, let's say you've clicked through this, they have Excel. Unfortunately, I can't scroll down here, but later on you'll see that Fin app. And again, you might look at it and say, okay, they're copying from the invoice, they're putting it in SAP. They've already put it in Excel, we know we can train them not to do that. Why are they also putting it in the Fin app? Well, you might find out, maybe from talking to someone else, hey, actually there's another part of the business that uses the data still from that Fin app. We never actually got rid of that data set. We still kind of need to enter there for now. So, either you might have some change where you just decide, hey, we could fix that other process. It might also be, hey, we can automate that for now and have that Fin app part of it sort of automated. Right? So now you've got training, you've got automation, maybe it's reconfiguration, whatever it is, again, the idea is you now have the data to say, here's why we need to make these changes. Right. So far, so good. Yeah?
This might seem silly, but does Fortress IQ run in the background, or does it come with like a start-stop feature?
So,
the person is doing something in SAP,
so
suddenly sees an email.
it runs in the background. I don't want to impact the employee at all. That said, for privacy and whatever, and there's other things they can do. They do have the ability to stop the sensor and restart it. It's not a technical need from a product perspective. It's just so they feel comfortable with it running and they understand they have that power.
So how does the design continuity come up with like that process graph and stuff?
So and I think we'll probably have to do some of this, unfortunately, later online, but for the process graph piece, that's one screen that I haven't shown you here, which is where you can define what you're looking for. So if I record an entire team, and I know the only process I care about starts on this screen and ends on this screen, I can actually stick that in and say, hey, only find processes start here, end here, and show me it. And that's what it shows you. Yeah.
So what if there's a deviation, and maybe it's something that you said that triggered my question.
Right.
What if they're working on something and then all of a sudden they go, oh, I just see
Yeah.
the mail icon come up and I want to go check my
Right.
email.
So this is going to show you, if I can go back, there's a couple of things here. This is going to show you the top paths, right? So at some point, we're not trying to do workforce management. What we're trying to do is show you commonalities that make sense for optimization focus. So there's two things there. One is, if someone does sort of one tangent, it's probably not going to show on the top paths. It's not going to show up here, right? The other thing is, if often the tangent is something like Teams, and you realize there's just a lot of back and forth with Teams no matter what, when you search for the process, you can tell it, hey, just don't include Teams in terms of as part of the process. You can actually tell it, hey, only include these apps or exclude these apps. There's a lot of different filtering that lets you really quickly get, remove that noise, if you will. Does that make sense?
So let's talk about noise in just a second. But that's why we also observe for a period of time for those random activities. If we were just doing a point in time, like for an hour or whatnot, you might miss that, or you might think that's part of the process. The fact that we record for anywhere from 5 to 10, depending on the process. Some month-end processes we record from last week in the month to 2 weeks after, at least in some customers' cases. So we just want a minimum set of data in order to do that. And that allows us to capture those random variations that might occur.
So when it has noise like that, does it ignore that one chunk and still include it in one of your common variations, or?
So it depends. So for example, if you have a common variation, let's say you didn't, let's say, I don't know, let's say Excel sometimes is noise, let's say sometimes it's not. If you've got a really common scenario where they're using Excel at the same point every time, you'll see it. And then for other scenarios, maybe it's not used at all, right? But there is still some, element of like, what is really the noise and what isn't. There is stuff coming up, and there is actually some other things that I haven't shown here that do some more sort of noise reduction. But this is sort of where we are right now, which is showing you the top paths, showing you the top parts of the process, and also allowing you to filter off those things. Typically, that's what it is, yeah.
Quick question. I'm just saying the way we're organized, we have 50 plus offices broken down in 10 different regions. The regions work very independent from each other.
Yes.
So would you run this to, let's say, one process for 10 regions, and would the process discovery help find, let's say, 80% of the screenshots that are sent to the cloud are unique or not unique, standardized, but 20% are exceptions?
Sort of. So for example, there's a couple ways to do it. The cool thing is, first off, once you have the data there, the data's there. You can look at it any way you want. So if you've collected data across 10 different regions, right, you can look at all 10 different regions and see what it shows as the common process. You may look through it and realize, wait, there was one team that did this process 1,000 times, everyone else did it once, and most of the process is that one team. That actually, by the way, has happened, where people think everyone does the same thing. Turns out they don't. You get to learn something from that. The other option is, if you decide you want to sort of see how they do it differently, you can just tell the platform, look for the process just on this team, and look for it on this team, and then you can kind of look at it and see, hey, is it the same thing?
That's exactly what is being tried, because we don't want to automate for the sake of automation.
Yeah.
We want to standardize as much as possible.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it depends on your goals. If your goal is across the company, that you want to understand where you can optimize the most. If one team does 90% of the work and it happens to show that one team, that's still a lot of, optimizing for that one team makes sense if they're doing most of the work. So again, it depends on the results. It depends on what your goal is. Does that make sense? Right? If your goal is optimization, you're really just looking for commonalities. Yeah, please.
Who's moderating this?
On the back. We'll start with the back and then move up. Go ahead.
So in terms of process optimization, if you look at, are there ways to see it from team to team? So let's say because a lot of times there's always a handoff that's the most critical point.
Yeah.
So trying to see from team to team, how does that get mapped out in a process, in a flow like that?
Yeah. So. It's a good question.
Oh, great.
So there's areas where we're really strong, right? You want to understand what's really happening on a team. There's nothing better. If you want it to somehow automatically figure out that process 1 starts on team A, but connected to process 2 on team B, it's not going to automatically do that at this point, right? It doesn't understand the context behind it. Now, that said, if you have a BA looking at this and they look at team 1's process 1, they may know that process 2 comes after. And when it comes to documenting it, you can actually link those two and document them as one process. But it's not going to automatically link them. Does that make sense? Right.
Yeah, nothing on the market does that quite yet. That's a little bit too sophisticated right now.
What do you think about the integrated use of process mining and task mining to the big view and particular steps?
I like that. It's like you set me up. All right. So the question was for everyone else, what do I think about sort of combining process mining and what we're calling process discovery? You can call it, again, I've already said this, 99% of task mining is different, but if you want to call it that, that's fine. But what about combining those two? If in my ideal world, you would have both, right? So for example, if you really don't know really where to start, or you don't really know what people are doing across the company, process mining does a really good job of linking right, what happens in team A to team B, right? It doesn't tell you all the other stuff that we tell you. It might just say, hey, SAP, here's how it links from process 1 to process 2.
But it's within that app.
Right, within that app. It's only if it has logs. I think some of you probably already know the limitations of process mining, but there's those limitations. It'll just tell you for the system of record, and you'll miss a lot of the information. But you'll know that maybe process 2 is taking extra long. And now, once you know that, you could throw our sensors on that team and see what's really happening. It's not just SAP. It's also Excel. It's also the Fin app that I showed you. And now you have the information that you need to figure out what you can do to optimize it.
Yeah, if you missed the presentation earlier with one of our customers, Mars, they're using, it talks about using process mining, in this case it was Celonis, together with us, and how the two work together, right? And I think a simplistic way to do it is if you look at the top level, the process mining will point out kind of where the hot spots or bottlenecks are, but you can't drill in to actually identify what that problem or bottleneck is. And that's where we would come in, because we can give you that user level understanding of what's happening within that bottleneck that was identified. Okay. Yeah. Well, whoever's next.
Yeah, there was, yeah, good, and then we'll get you.
There's a follow-up to this question.
Yeah.
Suppose you're using this
Yeah.
to complete the picture
Mhm.
that comes from process.
Yeah.
And fill the gaps and all.
Yeah.
Where does that happen? So is this data portable into products like
Yeah.
Celonis or others?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
it here?
Yeah. You can export a CSV file, and that's what we're doing with Celonis. All right, we're taking what we call a mining run that Charlie alluded to, so that raw data set, and then it's imported there. And then it will be visualized, but then you can trigger actions together with whether it be an automation. But if you have a chance, and I think that session was recorded, I would take a look at it because it talks through that solution and then offering and what it could be, right? Where you have the mining, right? You have the discovery, kind of drilling down, and then you can have the automation kicked off, right, to remediate and have this virtuous cycle occurring. So I would encourage you, if you have the chance, to take a look at the recording. Yeah.
I thought there was someone else in the back, but maybe not. Go ahead.
There's someone in the back now.
Yeah, someone's back now.
So first off, I'll preface it that we believe in the process.
Yeah.
And we purchased Discovery from Automation Anywhere.
Yeah.
Did not get implemented, didn't get to really do anything with it. This past year, we purchased Fortress IQ, so we do believe in the product. We've got our first proof of concept going on. What we're finding, what we wanted was more of an automated, I do it, I can click out, filter out what I want for data mining, but I want to create my PDD.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're finding is it's highlighted several pieces, but like when you highlight Excel, I got 20 columns in Excel that they do. I'm not getting an accurate picture of what everything is being done in Excel, so I'm still having to spend time with the user, the subject matter expert, to go, what about this? What about this? And that's not exactly what my vision was.
Yeah, I think so there's two things. First of all, I would say there's no question that what we're showing you is accurate, meaning what we're showing you is what's happening. I think what you're saying is you're not getting it sort of automatically split out to show you some sort of commonalities within the Excel screen, for example. Is that what you're saying?
Right. Everybody has a sales, everybody has a vision, everybody has the
Yeah.
way it goes. When we looked at it and turned it on, turned it off,
Yeah.
we do data mining, we exclude out anything,
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah.
we're not doing it. And then we create a PDD.
Yeah.
Then we want to take that PDD and go, okay, user, review this, let me know what's there. But what we're finding is we have a lot more questions because of what we found.
Yep.
Almost the same as if we did it manually and had questions. And that's what we want to get away from. Now we're on our first proof of concept. We've got 3 proof of concept automations to do, so it's our first step, but we're looking for a faster, streamlined button, PDD, here development.
So-
All right,
to do.
we will follow up with you after.
Yeah,
We
we'll
have
follow up
10
with
minutes left, so we need to keep
Yeah,
moving.
okay, so keep going, but we'll follow up. But in general, yeah, right, like it's going to show you Excel. It may not understand the context of the different columns and understand what's happening because Excel generally isn't structured, but we can talk about that more later. All right.
Please we'll find out.
Yeah, and I'm around. So the other thing I want to show doesn't display as well, but that's okay. So in this example, we took the data, exported it from our platform. Again, everything I'm talking about is things you can do as a user of the platform. So you export it from the platform. I imported this into, in this example, Power BI. We happen to have templates available for Power BI or Tableau, but the reality is it doesn't matter. If you have a BI tool that you like to use and it can read CSV, you can create a similar dashboard. The idea here is, though, to be able to use the data to make the business case of why you're looking at this process. So for example, we looked through the process, right? We saw that the FinApp and Excel piece, either we can get rid of the Excel piece through training, the FinApp, we think we can automate most of that. Between the two, we think we can reduce the time by 40%. So now the numbers up here are what you as the business, right, put in. Based on looking at the Fortress IQ data, I can remove 40% of this. We know we have 50 employees around the globe that do this process. It costs us $60 an hour per employee, and it happens 260 days a year, the process. And now when it multiplies by the data it gets from Fortress IQ about how much time that takes, right, overall for the process, we have an ROI of 400 plus K a year. And so now you can go back to the business and say, here's what we recommend and here's why. Right? Again, it's about having, now you have real quantitative data. And if they say, how do you know they're doing this? You can point back to the actual data and you can actually show them, here's how often it's happening. Right? In fact, it's all in this chart here, further down that I can't show you. But any questions on that? Yeah, in the back.
Real quick, on the Power BI, you identified for that particular dashboard. Is there an out-of-the-box integration for that?
It's
or is it an out-of-the-box dashboard?
It's an out-of-the-box template that you can install. It's not like going to pull it in automatically, right? But if you export the CSV, you just have the template that we give you, load it, it'll show up like that.
Okay.
All right. And then back to, we sort of mentioned the PDD, but back to sort of creating the PDD. If you find an instance you want to document, you can select which steps you want it to document. Right? This is all doing here. You can select which steps, and then have the platform. I'm going to skip through this. We don't have much time, but this is sort of showing you how someone links up a bunch of stuff with the context. If you remember earlier, I showed you that you couldn't see it, but those colors were the context. And it creates a Word doc that this is a part of that I'm showing you right here. But you can see it automatically cropped the image for you, right, to the area where the activity happened. It gives you a link, that view link to the full image if you need it. It automatically created that sentence for you in SAP, entered data in the user text field. Again, because it understands that's a text field, it understands the name of it is user, and it's able to generate an entire Word document for you, which is the PDD. So now you haven't spent that extra effort to create this. Does that make sense? I think that's it for, let's see, for this part of it. We've got about,
well, there's a couple more
I'm not going
slides.
to go back to the backup content.
Can I go back to close out? We have a couple more slides, Rihanna? Yes? No? No? Are we done? I can't get back to my closing slide?
Well, I'll answer one question. You asked them. I'll answer.
Like this login, this is creating a
That's your slide.
but, if you're following like click by click, but if you were to actually put that in automation, that would be incredibly inefficient to log in that way since there are more efficient ways to log in.
Sure. Yeah.
Oh, here it is.
So is there a question like around that? What's the question?
Like, would you have any plan to have SPDs for common logins like that automatically show the
We have a vision for creating some sort of skeleton bot, right, with automation anywhere.
It's not past tense.
What?
It's not past tense.
No, it's not past. Sorry, we have it. It's going to happen. But right now, what we have is the PDD for output, and the idea is to show you what's actually happening. Now, how you optimize that, we're not dictating that, right? Again, you may decide that, hey, this PDD tells me what's happening, but it's not actually how I want to automate it. That's fine, right? I'm not dictating how you decide to optimize the process.
Okay, we got 5 minutes, and anyway, there's probably more questions. So just to wrap up, again, as we've said throughout, really, it's about having the data in order to make an informed decision, right? And automation just being one of those decisions that you can pursue. I was talking to a company in London when I was out there, and it was interesting because the way that it's married out, they have their process excellence team partnering closely with their automation COE, and their whole process is to lean out a process and then hand it over to the automation guys to look for those opportunities. So it's a good fit for us for both of those teams, and that's how we're pursuing it. I haven't seen that too often, But that is something that, again, we're working with a lot of continuous improvement or process excellence teams as well. But as we said, if we look at what we call these outcomes over on the right, there are many paths you can pursue, but you got to have the right data for that to make that decision. Okay, and that's what we're trying to work on, is providing our customers with the right data. We're also going to do, to the question in the back, is continue to improve so that there's less, there is some, as you saw with Charlie, there is some manual intervention, not everything. There's no product on the market where you're completely doing this. So what we try to do is decrease the amount of interaction with the product, right? Let the software do as much as possible, and that's what we're working towards, okay? There you go. So the key thing on this slide, right, we are part, and this is us right here, of the Automation Success Platform, right? As you heard Mahir earlier today talk about that, right? It's a set of connected apps, right, within the platform, all working together, right, to deliver an outcome for you, and whether it be automation or whatnot. But the key is that they're all working together, right? And then if I look at this is one of the key things, right? If we're moving to the cloud, right? And we are in the cloud, but the overall platform runs on-prem or in the cloud. But you need to have that ability to, for the product to work reliably, to scale, right? So these are key tenets to us to ensure, right, that we deliver to our customers in a reliable and consistent fashion. And for us, as a startup, being part of Automation Anywhere, that's one thing that we've benefited from. Our early customers, right? When you're a small startup, there's only so many things to go around. Now that we've tripled the size of our team as part of the larger ecosystem, it's brought our ability in order to deliver in a more consistent fashion. And then Charlie will do personal demos out there if you want, but feel free. We have monthly online webinars. Right? Contact your local AE. I realize I didn't put my email address up there, but you know, if you see my name, it's firstname.last @ and feel free to contact me with any questions. And then we're working closely, for those of you that are our partners, these are just some of the GSIs that we've worked with. We also work with the smaller and regional RSIs. But the key thing is that there's an opportunity, you know, whether or not you have the staff, whether or not you need to augment, or whether or not you want to partner with an SI or a partner of some sort to help you take this data and to improve your business, they're available to help you as well. And I know we have 1 minute left. Privacy, does anyone in 90 seconds have a question on that? Or do you have other questions?
That's the question. Maybe you mentioned it, but I missed it. The roadmap for
Yes.
Are there plans to integrate, build a process flow?
Yeah.
Integrate that directly?
Yeah, you saw that vision demo earlier today, and that's it. Our focus this year, we have Adi mentioned this on his product. There's some new features called interactive mining and automation scorecard. We're working on those first, right? So in other words, make it easier to identify opportunities within the product and then surface those opportunities for automation to our customers. Those are the first two things that we're really focusing on. And then the integration to kick off that workflow or the skeleton bot, that's next year at this point, right? And I say that next year, it's our next fiscal year, which starts in February, okay? So that's where we are. Privacy, you have, well, we can go over by a minute. You want to address that? How we address that, both
so I'll do that
pre and post?
I'll quickly, there's two things that you can do around privacy. One is for the sensors, you can actually configure which applications you want it to collect data for. You can even configure which web domains you want it to collect data for, right? And you can even configure what kind of data you want it to collect. So maybe there's an application you don't want it to collect screenshots, but you want to know the applications used. So you have different options around that. That said, right, there's still scenarios where, for example, you might want us to see everything about SAP, but maybe you have some certain sensitive data that as a company you have a policy that it can't leave your network. Right? So in that case, you would deploy our privacy-enhanced gateway on your own virtual private cloud, so somewhere in a network you control, where the data gets sent there first, including the screenshots, and the privacy-enhanced gateway actually goes through the screenshots, reads them, sort of like a human would, redacts the sensitive text, right? Because all we need to know to find a process, we need to know the field and the title, but we don't care about the content of the fields. So it'll redact the sensitive text and then send what's left onto our platform so that you can still use the platform for process discovery, but all the sensitive data remains within your network.
There's your 30-second,
Yeah.
75-second overview. But we're happy to answer more questions. But with, you know, in terms of the certifications and all that, whether it's ISO and HIPAA, we have all that stuff from a U.S. and global perspective. And then we have data centers that we've deployed in regionally across the world as well for data residency concerns as well, whether it be Canada, U.S., in Europe, multiple locations, we have that covered as well. Okay. Any last questions before we close? Yeah.
Yeah, the question I had is, when it comes to with the process map using the process discovery tool, does it also factor in the background processes? Because usually when you are talking about a process, you have like these steps, and in between you have like these background processes or integrations that do a lot of like the heavy lifting, right? So does this give you a view of those parts as well, which might be potential bottlenecks?
So our platform, anything you see on the screen, it collects, but if there's something like a back-end database script that's running that's doing X, Y, and Z, it won't know, right? The goal is optimizing sort of the human element of it, and so it's everything that you see on the screen.
Yeah. All right. Feel free to contact us. There are stations out there if you want to see a demo. And thank you for attending. Appreciate it.
Thanks.